So the other thing from the Baldelli firing was, well, what's next?
Right.
There's going to be a new manager here at some point. And the interesting thing now is I believe they are one of now 8 teams,
Has that gotten
uh,
up to 8 now?
yeah, who
Okay.
have an opening. It's possible that could still grow at some point. I mean,
Right.
somebody from the playoffs could get fired, I suppose, or something like that. And so, like many things, Falvey didn't really give too many hints of substance. He was asked, you looking for someone young, looking for someone old, looking for someone experienced? Are you looking for someone who's
Yeah.
focused on next season? Are you looking for someone who's going to be, what he basically wouldn't say a single thing. Are you looking for someone who breathes air? Well, I don't want to say that necessarily, but I will say, and I know you had a little bit less of this takeaway. I came away from it and I was already kind of leaning towards this as their approach because young and inexperienced also means cheap. It also means someone
Right.
who can be what they would call collaborative in terms of not being set in their ways and not having their own approach to things that can kind of blend more in with the organizational approach. I've thought since the firing that the next manager is more likely to be what Baldelli was 7 years ago when they hired him, which
Right.
was mid 30s, somewhat recently retired player who had worked in scouting, who had worked in front office roles with the Rays. He had worked on the coaching staff with the Rays for several years, sort of a rising candidate, but a 30 something, or let's say even early 40 something. Whereas, there are a lot of other ways you can go with that. You can get just a straight up retread manager,
Yeah.
someone who maybe was that, got a job, struggled, got fired, and is now ready for a second chance. Or you can go a completely different way, which John has talked a lot more about on the Patreon side, which is you can go for like a 70-year-old guy who's managed World Series teams, who's won Manager of the Year multiple times, who might be going to the Hall of Fame or close to it. A Bruce Bochy, a Bob Melvin, Joe Madden.
Right.
There's tons of guys like this. I came away from the Falvey thing, and again, he certainly did not say much of substance.
No, he did
Just
not.
it's just all dots that I am attempting to connect here. But I came away more convinced than ever that they will not be going in-house, that they will not be going with the, Bruce Bochy style, bring in a really proven guy who might only be there for 2 or 3 years. And, this is going to be young equals cheap, which also
Right.
probably goes to what they're looking for. But part of it was that when he was asked, and you might have even asked him this, Falvey was asked, what do you tell manager candidates about next year, about 2026, about
Yeah.
the payroll, about the approach of the team, about how this offseason is go, about do we think we can be competitive? What is sort of the expectation for a manager taking over this team that just lost 92 games, that just was the worst team in the American League for the last 2 months? Are you expecting them to win right away? And he didn't say yes or no on that, but what he did say was, we want a manager who's basically, this is paraphrasing, who's not focused on 2026. And
Right.
I get how he was phrasing that. He was saying, we want someone in it for the long haul.
Sure.
We
Yeah.
want someone who's going to come in and build with us
Yeah. It
and
wasn't
look
clear
to,
he was saying 2026 doesn't count, right?
but he wasn't not
But he
saying
wasn't
that.
not saying that. That is
Yeah.
correct. Yes. And that's
And
a haunting
yes,
reality right now, given some of the stuff we're hearing. So,
right. And so that made me, and that's fine. I mean, look, we both think they're not going to be good next year, more likely than not.
yeah.
And so I don't think it's impossible. Like if they don't trade Pablo Lopez and Joe Ryan and they spend a little bit of money on some bats and some bullpen guys, they could be competitive next year. Certainly. I'm not ruling that out. But if that's our feeling, then I'm sure a lot of manager candidates would have that feeling. And I also think, the less you're expecting to win next season or even in 2027, and I don't just mean having a winning record, but like really compete for playoff spots and playoff runs. Well, the less sense it makes to bring in someone who might be looking for their final job as a manager
Sure.
versus somebody who might be looking for their first or even second job as a manager. So I have no problem with that. I do think it's interesting. Like if you said to me, they're only looking for guys who are going to be in their first manager job, I'd go, okay, like that's fine. That's probably the pool that I would most be focusing on
Well, I mean,
anyway.
it's the pool they already jumped into, right? They already
Right.
jumped into it once. That's exactly who Rocco Baldelli was, and it would not be surprising if that's the way they went again. one of the reasons I thought they might not go that way again is just because that's where they went this. And I don't think they were upset with how the Baldelli one turned out, but I just don't know if that's what you want to jump into again, given the state of this team. But
Right.
maybe like if they really are kind of thinking, state of this team is we're probably not competing in 2026. We're kind of looking at 2027, 2028, 2029. We need to develop. We're taking a look at the AAA roster of Walker Jenkins and Emmanuel Rodriguez and Culpepper and some of those names, and as well as some of the young arms, developing Abel and Bradley and Festa and Matthews and Simeon Woods Richardson, etc.
Yeah, we know all the guys on the
Right.
team, John. It's okay. You don't have to prove it to us.
I mean, they can easily take a look at that and go, next year's kind of a reloading / rebuild. Not a complete rebuild. We're not doing a complete tear down rebuild, but maybe we're doing something close to it. And then a veteran manager doesn't really make sense necessarily.
And I'm fine with that. I think that is probably the right approach to take, or the best approach to take. But two things on that. One, if you are one of those rising coaches looking for your first job as manager, a lot of circumstances you take what's offered, but even with like Baldelli, I remember he had multiple teams interested in him. You're still choosing between offers once you get to be sort of a hot candidate, rising candidate. I wonder where the Twins stack up in that regard. But what I'll also say is, it's fine to say to a young manager, some 35-year-old third base coach or hitting coach or whatever that you're bringing in, hey, we're looking to be competitive next year, but realistically, we're looking 27, 28, 29. We're looking to build this thing along with you. We're looking at this as a 10-year thing. Well, that all sounds great in theory. But if it goes bad next year, are you certain that this front office is going to be around that hired you?
Yeah.
And if it's a new front office, are you certain that they're going to stick with the manager who got hired by the old front office and had a losing season in their debut season? And so I do think there's a lot more uncertainty within that could potentially thin their pool of candidates that view them as a not just viable option, but like a preferred option, let's say. And then you throw in the money aspect and all that. But yeah, I mean, that was, again, this is just us reading between the lines, but also Baldelli or Falvey wouldn't even answer questions about what traits he's looking for in a manager,
Right.
which I found because it's such a boilerplate thing. What are you looking for in the new manager? Well, I've never hired a new manager and I never will, but you know what? I can tell you, they want a guy who's going to focus on fundamentals. They want a guy who's going to be aggressive on the bases. They want a guy who's going to focus on player development. They want a guy, you can list off just the boilerplate things that any GM or front office guy in that spot is going to say. And he even kind of stopped short of doing that, other than saying, and I think this was kind of tied to the 2026 questions, we're looking for someone who's going to help develop a young roster, which again points me not to some 70-year-old who's been around the block, but some 37-year-old who's looking to get on the block, basically.
Yeah, it might very well be that the reason I was talking about an older manager or something like that is because I'm just of the opinion that they need. The biggest thing I feel like they need from this manager is a different voice in the room.
Which often happens, by the way.
Right.
When you, in any sport, in any context, whether it's a coach, manager, whatever, when you fire one guy, you often will have the next guy be, if not the opposite, certainly on the other side of the aisle from that guy. If you fire a young guy, you hire an old guy. If you fire an old guy, you hire a young guy. If you fire a new school guy, you hire an old school guy.
Right.
If you fire kind of a player's manager who's kind of laid back, you bring in a guy who's fire and brimstone. That has been the case forever across all sports.
And welcome to the end of this video. There's lots more. For another, just click on one of these boxes.
Or click on this circle in the middle to subscribe to all of our Twins Talk.
Thank you.
Gleeman